Hello and welcome to On the Ledge podcast. I'm your host, Jane Perrone, and in this week's show, I'm visiting London's oldest botanic garden, the Chelsea Physic Garden, taking a potter around their glasshouses with curator Emily Hazell, finding out why some plants love living with ants, how to make sure your succulents have not been poached, and why geophytic pelargoniums might make an excellent addition to your houseplant collection.
Hello, my name's Emily Hazell. I'm the curator at Chelsea Physic Garden. We're standing here today in the pelargonium glasshouse in our 353-year-old botanic garden in central London. So the garden was originally founded way back when it was actually a rural area. It was a farm. And the Worshipful Society of Apothecaries, they founded the garden in 1673 for the purposes of training their apprentices on how not to poison their patients. So being able to decipher between what was a medicinal plant and what was a poisonous plant, or the line therein, was the purpose of this garden. So they originally had their hall, and they still do today, down by Blackfriars. It kind of went through the fire of London and still stands. And they would get on a boat, on a barge on the Thames, and they would come up the river and land in the boatyard, because the Thames would come all the way up into the garden at that time. And then they would come and they would learn all about medicinal plants. And then shortly after that, the garden became more and more involved with the exploration of plant life across the globe, and we became known for experimenting with different plants, planting them out in glass houses as well as planting them out in the gardens. We're standing in our glass houses that we restored about 5 years ago, and it was completed about 2 years ago.
I don't think I've been in a garden that's got an older history than this. It's pretty amazing here in what now is the centre of London.
Yes.
A very posh, nice part of London as well. It's a really fascinating space. We're with the Pellies, so let's start with these. This is an area that I know you're very passionate about. So
yes.
Give me a 30-second sell on species pelargoniums, Emily.
I think the thing I love about species pelargonium is when I first came across them as a student at Kew, I was absolutely shocked that some of these really gnarly looking plants that look like a potato in the back of your cupboard, all stretched out, would have these really beautiful flowers that you come to associate with these very, very common cultivars. And then when I dug a little bit further into them, sorry, this isn't 30 seconds.
Oh, no, keep going.
I found out that those plants could survive in the desert with just 40 millimetres of rainfall per year. And that absolutely blew my mind. And then you kind of go further into the species diversity, where the centre of that is in South Africa. And you find out you have geophytic ones that hide from the sun in the summer. And then you have other ones that are more herbaceous. And when a fire comes through the fynbos, they kind of re-sucker and reshoot. So they're really, really diverse genera. And that's why we have so many cultivars. And also why I came to this garden, because Chelsea Physic Garden has a long history of cultivating pelargonium. And Professor Mary Gibby, who's passed away, really developed the collection and researched the pelargonium collection. And that's why we have this collection, this potted collection today.
Yeah, it's you're right. The range is amazing. There's one that looks like a Ripsalis right here, Tetragonum. I mean, that's incredible. They are a really varied group, but as you say, it's a beautiful display. Tell me why you've got some organza bags over some of the flowers. Is that a pollination procedure?
So one of the challenges of growing loads of species really close together, if we want to bank them in our seed bank, then we have to make sure they're closed pollinated, so pollinated by hand. So we'll put an organza bag over the flower before it opens, and then we'll take it off to move some pollen onto the style, and then we'll put the bag back on, and then we'll bank stick that in our seed bank, because as you can see, there's quite a large variation of this collection. It's really hard to get the watering right when you're growing a plant like the tetragonium, which is succulent and has green stems. They're able to do crassulacean acid metabolism in a similar way to cacti and euphorbia, and right next to one which sort of might grow in a more free draining, wetter area of South Africa. So we back up all of those plants in our seed bank so we can keep them.
And for the beginner species Pelly owner, is there one here that's kind of accessible and that you'd recommend to start with?
I think if you're going to start with a species pelargonium, think about whether you're an overwaterer or an underwaterer.
That's a good point. That's a really good... I'm an underwaterer.
Yeah.
So what could you recommend for me?
So I'd go for something, if you can get hold of it, something like the pelargonium carnosum.
Okay.
Or I would also go for some of the geophytic ones like the pelargonium balcori, which is round this corner over here. You can see it's got really fluffy pinnatifid leaves. They're finely divided, and then when it flowers in the winter, which is really nice to have that early show of flowers, it's a really kind of cut petal. So it's just a very floofy plant. Because it's geophyte, it doesn't need much watering. So that's a good one for you. But then if you want one that needs a bit more watering, you can go for some of the softer stemmed ones like pelargonium radans, but it's still a pelargonium. It can withstand a little bit of neglect.
And what conditions do they need in the winters? Do they need a really cool kind of resting period over the winter months?
Yeah, if it's one of the more xerophytic ones, the succulent ones, they're actually they can be winter growers because that's when they get that rainfall. So you sort of water them in the winter from sort of December all the way through to around now, and then let them go dormant when you go on your summer holidays. The softer ones, like pelargonium radans, you do need to water them all year round, but you'd sort of reduce it in the winter.
Got you.
Yeah.
And do you find that when people come in here that there's particular things that people are drawn to, plants that are the kind of the general public tend to find a magnet? I mean,
what people?
I mean, I'm drawn to the weird ones, but that's just me.
I think that's one of the things we're doing is because those ones that you allow to get dormant, they really kind of crisp up and look hideous, like this Pelargonium echinatum, and you'd be forgiven for thinking it is a cactus or is quite ugly or dead. But that's the plant's way of sort of escaping the realities of summertime in the desert. So I would say people are very much drawn to the flowers of our cultivar collection, which surrounds the species. And depending on which one is in bloom, they really do enjoy them. We've got Chelsea morning here growing, which has light pink petals and sort of a really sort of very bright pink tinge in the centre part of the petals. That's quite a popular one because we're in Chelsea.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's a beautiful display. Is this a challenge to keep this many plants going? I can see you've got some pest management measures in place. What are the challenges of growing this number of plants in a glass house like this?
Yeah, so the challenge for us is actually often in the summer heat. The glass houses are now, because of climate change, they're now getting too hot in the summer. And then that creates the perfect environment for pests like thrip or whitefly, as well as aphids. So we use biocontrols. We haven't used any hard pesticides. That's quite a traditional way of referring to them for a very long time. We just use something called SB Plant Invigorator.
Yep. Well, yeah. Great stuff. Yeah.
And then we use biocontrols, which you can see these tiny little orange cups that we're hooking onto there, which have this sort of brown meal in there. That's where the various biocontrols are housed, and then they creep out and eat the aphids.
Well, it's a really wonderful display, and I think you have convinced me. I think a xerophytic Pelly might be a nice addition to my collection. That has inspired me. Let's move through to the next space. We're going to go through a door and take ourselves into a more humid environment.
Yeah.
And one that's filled with things that people like to grow as houseplants. Some of them, anyway. Tell me about the tropical corridor that we're in now.
Yeah, so the tropical corridor has the wall that's to the outside world on the street that you walk past on the way in. That's the wall of the tropical corridor. So it really sits up against that south-facing wall, and it's very narrow. It's only about 2 meters wide. But I think the beauty of it is it allows you to get really up close to the plants that we have in the collection. You literally can't walk through this corridor without touching the plants. And we have a range of plants in this collection that we've curated on the grounds of either ethnobotanical uses or medicinal uses, as well as their significance to the various curators of the garden in the past. So we've got the Cataranthus roseus, the Madagascan periwinkle that has really beautiful pink flowers and glossy green leaves, as well as plants such as coffee and Theobroma cacao, which we can grow, but we're experimenting with different ways to train these plants, because actually the glasshouse is only about 10 foot tall in the highest point.
Right. So you can't keep going up and up forever.
Exactly. So we're looking into how different countries that would cultivate these plants might train them for productivity, similarly to how you prune a vine or how you prune an apple tree and espalier it. We're looking into how we can have this pruning regime that allows us to keep them in this really tight, compact space.
I think it's fascinating that here you've got this plant, the source of chocolate, of cacao that makes cocoa beans, Theobroma cacao. And honestly, if you showed me that plant, I wouldn't be able to identify what it was, which is crazy. Where would we be without chocolate?
I don't know where I'd be without chocolate.
And yet I'm sure if you sort of put that tree in front of, a survey of people, a very small percentage would be able to identify what it was. But it's a really beautiful tree. Do you ever get the cocoa beans growing on it?
So we have had it flower. This plant we haven't had fruit yet. I know that other gardens are able to. So that's the challenge for us, is to establish a pruning regime where it can flower. It has cauliflory, so it could have sort of flowers on the bark and then fruits from there. So it's about retaining that wood on the plant, but keeping it nice and small for a compact space.
That's a challenge, I'm sure.
Sure, a lot of Londoners and other people can appreciate that if you're just growing in your house. And we have a complicated history as a garden with Theobroma cacao. Hans Sloane, he sort of observed the plant being grown and how the cacao was used by indigenous people to treat various medicinal, various kind of ailments that somebody might have. And then he brought it over and introduced it into this country and sort of gave the first cacao for it to be developed into chocolate as we know it today through Cadbury. So that's our relationship with cacao in the garden, and we tell those stories confidently within this space, as well as really representing those really long-term sort of relationships with that medicinal plant that people would have across the globe.
Absolutely, because I imagine that humans' relationship with this species has been a very long one, and our understanding of a bar of chocolate is a very tiny bit on the end of what's been a really long history, human history with this plant. So
absolutely,
it's interesting,
because before modern medicine, we would have just relied on plants and some other less desirable things for treating our own ailments. We've got a book in the library which shows the apothecaries inspecting urine for the use of medicinal applications using urea. So if somebody was going to give me some cacao, I'd probably snaffle that up.
Exactly. It could be a lot worse.
Various other treatments. We have interpretation that sort of shows you how the cacao bean looks in the collections, as well as lots of other significant plants such as the Cinchona pubescens here with really, really glossy leaves. And this was used in the development of drugs for malaria. The Europeans in South America observed people sort of chewing on the bark, which they obviously had developed as their own herbal remedy for malaria. And then the Europeans sort of extracted that knowledge and used that to develop a lot of modern malarial drugs that we have today. As a student at Kew, I had a really terrible incident of moving giant potted cinchona around the garden where we actually snapped the leader out of it.
Oh no.
I was absolutely devastated. So hopefully we can do a better job of growing this one in this space.
Yeah, that's a challenge. But I mean, that is the nature of dealing with plants, isn't it? And they tend to be quite resilient in the end, but I can imagine the trauma of that would be quite severe.
Yeah, absolutely. Another notable collection that we have in the glasshouses, other than ethnobotanical plants, is our staghorn ferns. One of them's been moved. So we've got a big range of Platycerium. This is Platycerium stomaria, and we've also right next to it got Platycerium bifurcatum. I love looking at these plants when the misting system goes off. They look so spooky. They're really alien. They have this sort of plate-like frond, and then they spit out these sort of fertile fronds like stag's horns. And depending on the species, their spores will be in different places on the fronds, and are these brown sort of rusty spores, and I absolutely love them. We've got them mounted on bark. I think they're an ideal plant for someone's bathroom at home, and you can see we've got little tiny babies germinating.
That must be quite old because there's so much build-up of I can't remember what the basal leaves are called, but that's incredible. And I remember from going to your other, your fern house where you've got more in there, even bigger, and they are really impressive. But as you say, you can start off small with a baby one and have them mounted, and they're not that hard to grow, I don't think, but very beautiful and very weird.
We missed them over. And as you said, we've got one in the shade, the hardy fernery. And because that's sort of open, the windows and doors are open quite a lot of the year. We actually have robins nesting in the staghorn ferns. So even the wildlife like our weird and wonderful plant collection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's walk down.
Let's walk down. I'm loving the anthurium inflorescence here. I've just been doing some episodes on anthuriums and anthurium pollination, and that is a very cool. Is that the spadix? That's the spadix, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look at that! It's like a corkscrew. Is it Wendleri? I think this is.
Yes,
that's a really. I mean, again, I'm always amazed that people are growing these in their front rooms, but it's a very interesting plant with these long, I don't know, sword-like leaves.
They kind of remind me of like really long ears, but I'm not sure what animal I'm thinking of because the leaves are about a metre long.
Yeah.
With these really long petioles. And as you said, the inflorescence that we're looking at is, would you say, about 40 centimetres long.
Yeah.
And you can really see the sort of perigone, and that's creating this really lovely texture, and it's just hanging down the middle of the tropical corridor. So you really get up close to the plants at Chelsea Physic Garden. We can't help that. We're only 3.6 acres of land, and of that is about 3 acres is cultivated. Our modern collection is around 4,500 different types of plants. So you just have to go a couple of footsteps and you'll see so many different plants. You don't have to, go on a big walk around a giant landscape. It really allows you to get up close and personal to these beautiful, beautiful plants. Another plant we've got, which is in our ethnobotany collection, is the Manihot Grahamiae, which again we're training against the wall. This is something that we've actually started to plant out outside and put some winter protection. So that sometimes now, I know a lot of your viewers are interested in houseplants. It sort of allows you to expand your collection if you can put them outside in the summer.
Absolutely, yeah. I love an indoor-outdoor plant. That's a good thing.
So that's the Manihot. We've also got some really, really beautiful orchids, which are sadly not in flower at the moment, but we have this orchid tree that goes over the top of the tropical corridor that's made out of bark. And you've got various different orchids like the Stanhopea, Tillandsia, and we've also got various Ripsalis just cloaking this orchid tree that you get to walk under, and hopefully when the orchids come back into flower you can have this beautiful smell in the corridor.
Yeah, it's very cool. And, people create sort of miniature versions of this at home. You can take some cork and mount some orchids on it, add some ripsalis, add some epiphytes, and you've got a beautiful display. This is on a grand scale, obviously, which is very impressive. But yeah, if a plant is an epiphyte, then it kind of wants to grow this way, doesn't it? There's no fighting it. It's
No,
very cool.
absolutely. And it just creates that sense of immersion, even though unlike larger glass houses, we can't necessarily have the really big palms. We can create this sort of cloaking in plants, which I really, really love. And we're training lots of different plants up the wall that you walk past on the way in. So we've got our vanilla, planifolia, which is growing, which we have had fruit in the past. Since the restoration, I'm not sure that it has flowered. It just has to get back into it in the swing of things before it'll flower again. And that's a nice one to train up a wall, but I'm not sure. I'd love to hear from people that are growing a vanilla at home.
Yeah, I think it's something that, it's becoming increasingly available for people to buy and try. And the really interesting history on this one, I know that, this has a really fascinating history. I'm reading the sign because the name always escapes me.
Yeah.
Edmund Albius, who was an enslaved boy who discovered how to pollinate this plant using a twig or a blade of grass. How amazing is that? That a pollination discovery like that led to this amazingly productive plant, which obviously, again, as previously, colonialism then kicks in and is then kind of exploited and used by Western botanists and plant collectors. But I guess this is useful when you have school visitors coming around here, because you can actually say, well, vanilla, you love that flavour of vanilla. Well, this is the plant that it actually comes from, which is, I still find that mind-blowing.
Absolutely. Certainly growing up in cities, you mentioned that Chelsea as an area is quite posh. It's also one of the most built-up councils in the country. It's the second most built-up area. And we do actually have a large amount of people who live in housing estates and flats, in blocks of flats that, you don't have access to green space. You might not have access to a farm or even have seen an animal outside. So, knowing about what food is and where it comes from is a really important thing for children to connect to. And they can do this when they come on their school visits to the garden. You do a large amount of work with school visits, and as you say, they come in and they might learn, okay, vanilla essence that's in a Victoria sponge, this is where it comes from. But also really simple plants and foods, as you said, chocolate. There probably isn't the child that doesn't know about chocolate in the UK, but then there's other plants that we grow in our edibles garden outside, like beetroot, carrots, beans, sunflower oil, and that's what we're about. We're about telling people about where plants come from and their uses, and connecting them into the plants that heal. So that's what we do in this garden. That's our ambition.
I must just mention this. This is a new one on me. It's in a hanging basket, and I guess this is my style of plant because it's kind of a crazy octopus squid type setup.
Yeah.
Acanthostachys strobylacea. This is a bromeliad.
Yeah.
This is an incredible plant. Not very practical for the home because it's absolutely enormous, but it's got these long, succulent, stringy, I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, it's got these really long kind of weeping stems and leaves, and then you have the flower coming out in the axil, which is it says strobylacea because of the shape of the inflorescence. And it's just a really, really tiny bromeliad inflorescence, as you'd expect.
It's like a tiny pineapple.
It's like a tiny pineapple.
Yeah.
And then it's got these really vicious hooks along the margins. And it's a really beautiful form to have in a hanging basket.
It's just, I just love the weirdness of that. That's just so great. Imagine seeing that. It would be high up in a canopy somewhere, I'm sure, growing. It grows in Argentina, according to the label. So, yes, it's just a mind-blowing plant. And, as I say, I don't think I'll be introducing that at home because my husband already complains about getting hit on the head by plants. But
yeah, and the hook might might get you get you into a little bit of trouble. There's definitely a risk of kind of catching yourself.
Yes,
on that one.
Absolutely.
Another one of my favouritely named plants, Platycerium superbum.
Oh,
Not sure how you're supposed to say.
Well, is it? Yes, I know. I mean, it is. You're going to say superbum, aren't you? I mean, this is a magnificent plant. Another one of these incredible stag's horn ferns.
Yes,
it's just stunning. I mean, the weight of that, actually keeping that must be a concern. It's like I must have that carefully wired in. It's heavy.
We do have to be quite careful with these, and they're mounted on the wall. And as you said, because it's been growing on its mount for a very long time, the plant will be doing a lot of the work in terms of adhering up to the bark itself. But fixing it into the wall can be a bit of an issue sometimes.
Presumably when you did the renovation, you had to take these down.
I wasn't here for the renovation. It was run by my predecessor, Nell Jones, who, I am absolutely in awe of, manage this massive task, because we have the tropical corridor, Pelargonium glasshouse, Atlantic Islands collection, South African glasshouse, the nursery, the shade glasshouse, and a cacti succulent house, which were all sort of decanted at various times, propagated from, and then put back in once the carpenters had done their work, because they are timber framed glass houses. They're not aluminium or metal. They're sort of traditional cedarwood glass houses. So that's what we've got. And they were all taken out, and I'm sure there were some losses along the way. But that's all part of maintaining these historic collections in the glass houses.
Yeah.
We've got our little Amorphophallus collection.
Oh, yes.
What I will say is, because of our roof size, the glasshouse manager, John, and I, we are talking about what we do with our larger Amorphophallus, which we just weighed the other week, because when it puts its sole leaf out, it hits the ceiling. But I would really like to try and find a way to bring it to flower. So we're going to have further discussions about whether we move it outside when it's in leaf.
Yes. So, I mean, that would be interesting. I mean, the smell would be intense.
Yes.
I'm sure.
Yes.
But probably better out, maybe less intense outside. But such an incredible plant, that stem, mottled stem. It's just like something out of science fiction. A brilliant plant.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some smaller ones if you can't have Titanarum like we can't. This is Amorphophallus cognac. That has a really stinky, ugly flower, and Amorphophallus variabilis. So these ones are slightly smaller specimens that we're able to keep in cultivation at Chelsea permanently. But as I've said, the Titanarum is one we're going to have to battle, think of inventive ways to keep it going.
Yes.
in the collection. This is a fantastic plant just dangling down here. It's weird and wonderful. I can remember trying to find it in the palm house for an ident when I was a student at Kew. But it's a Hypnophytum formicarum, so it's ant plants. So we do actually have, unfortunately, a species of tropical ant that nests inside this really sort of, what would you say that looks like? It's
I don't know.
It's almost like a giant cyclamen coon.
Yes, that's a very good way of describing it.
Like 20 centimetres across. And then it's got these really sort of knobbly brown coloured stems coming out of the top. But the bit that's the giant cyclamen coon is basically an ant house. So the ants kind of have this relationship with these plants where they have their shelter and they defend it, but then also their feces feeds and gives nutrients to it. It's in the Rubiaceae family, and you can see these really, really cute, tiny little flowers, which I'm not sure maybe one of your listeners does. Possibly could also be pollinated by the ants. You can see these tiny little fruits developing, which kind of look like the berries you'd associate with Rubiaceae. So that's Hypnophytum, and that's just dangling in a terracotta pot with additional holes in to allow aeration, because it's an epiphyte, and that's just dangling down there.
Evolution is a wonderful thing. How on earth did that come about? It's just amazing. I mean, and there are quite a few different plants from different species that have this have some kind of relationship with ants, aren't there? So it's like it's obviously something that works for these plants. But you can understand why in nature it works really well for the ant and the plant. It's a mutually beneficial system. But you just end up with this. I mean, I've seen these cut open, these cordexes, and inside they're just, I mean, obviously you're not going to cut your beautiful specimen open, but the inside, it's an amazing structure, isn't it?
It's like a labyrinth.
More from the Chelsea Physic Garden shortly, but first, a little bit of housekeeping. Thank you to those who've joined my Patreon of late. Rosanna has tried a 7-day free trial of the Legend tier, and Katie, Steve, Brandon, Tim and B all became free members. Thank you to all of you for supporting the show. It's much, much appreciated. If you want to go and check it out for 7 days for absolutely free, please do that. You'll find my Patreon at patreon.com/ontheledge. All the info is there, but do drop me a line if you've got any questions. And this is going to be the last episode of the show before I take a short break of 3 weeks. I am going to be totally honest with you. I am really severely burnt out right now. Having come off of being made redundant, I had to hit the ground running straight away, and it's been a slog on top of, well, I don't talk much about personal stuff, but let me just say I've been going through a migraine hell, if I can put it that way, and it's been a really difficult period dealing with up to 10 plus migraines a month for, well, that's been going on for years, to be quite honest, although it has got worse recently. And I'm finally on some medication that is working, which is great, but I am just really burnt out now. So I'm going to be taking 3 weeks off. I will probably, if I get the chance, put out some On the Ledge Reloaded episodes, so bringing back old episodes for you to enjoy for those 3 weeks, so there'll be something dropping in your feed, and then I'll be back on July the 17th with a new episode. I just can't keep going. And, you know, I keep telling myself it's okay to take a break, because it is, and I'd say that to you too, as somebody who is phenomenally bad at taking a break and relaxing. That's exactly what I'm going to try to do. And if you miss the show, well, all I can say is, you know, do go and join the Patreon, because there's so much stuff there. Extra Leaf episodes, the first 50 episodes of the show, my audiobook, which if you join for the Legend free trial, you get access to the Atlas of Deadly Plants, and if you become a superfan, you can access my other audiobooks, but you can also buy those individually as well. So there's just a wealth of content there. So if you're missing this show, please do go and check that out. It's a really great way of supporting me, particularly right now when I'm coming back off rebuilding my freelance business, and it's tough. So I would love to have your support. It doesn't have to be in monetary form. It could just be passing on that you've enjoyed the show to another planty person, or maybe leaving a review for my podcast or one of my books. It all massively helps me. So thank you for everyone who does all that already, and thank you to everyone who's planning to do so as a result of this. But yeah, burnout is no joke, and I need to take a breath. So I hope you understand. And yeah, I will see you on the other side. But for now, we're going back into the Chelsea Physic Garden. Join me.
Shall we move through into the Southern Africa glasshouse, which is moving our way through the different areas, and now we're into a very different climate. Tell me about the plants in here, Emily.
Yeah, so this glass house is much cooler than the tropical corridor, because the plants that we have here are from all over southern Africa, not just South Africa, and they prefer to have a drier environment than the tropical corridor. So there's no misting system. You can probably hear the hum of the ventilation in the glass house, and it's got this very kind of rocky, deserty feel with some sandstone constructed and then gravel on the top. So the plants that we have in here are happy with a lot less water. We might water it once a week to once a month in the winter. We have a range of aloes. We also have some Asteraceae like the Felicia, and we have Haworthia, and we have Lyphops, as well as Pelargonium balcori, which we saw in the Pelargonium glass house with its fluffy leaves. This is really exciting for me, these tiny little stone plants, which we also have some sort of textural interpretation that children can touch and see. They are one that I really, really loved growing as before I got into horticulture, again, because you don't actually need to water them very often, and you allow them to go dormant, so then their outer leaves kind of crisp up and wither away. And then they have these fantastic flowers that almost look fake because they're in the Azoaceae family with these like beautiful yellow petals or white petals. We can't really talk about Lithops or Conophytum, as well as some species of Pelargonium, without acknowledging how important it is to source these from reliable sources, because they are being poached in the wild. And that is something that we talk about to visitors. So it's really important when you are sort of sourcing your plants that you make sure it's a above board nursery. And the signs to sort of look out for in terms of sourcing is, if you're buying it on eBay, if the person looks like they've got loads of old, mature lithops that look like they've sort of been growing in the wild, then that's a bit of a red flag. You shouldn't be buying those plants, but buying them from a reputable nursery.
Yeah, that is a real issue, isn't it? And I mean, they're so unassuming. They're designed to be camouflaged,
Yes.
and they do that very, very well. And then obviously with the flower that then sort of blows their cover for a short amount of time. There's a few things here that I don't think I've ever seen grown as a houseplant. What's this felt-leaved large plant here? I don't even recognise that.
Frena. It's in the pea family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you can kind of, if you imagine sort of a free-leafed pea, it's got one terminal, very large leaflet, and then another two down that are opposite. And when this flowers, it's amazing, but it's very, it can cope with the dry. So it's a pea plant.
It does. Now you say that, I can see it does look like a giant pea. The leaves are exactly that structure. Yeah. But who'd have thought? That's a really fascinating one. And things like Plectranthus, obviously, which we know is kind of like bedding and a very I mean, maybe was popular for a while as a houseplant. I'm not sure it is quite so popular now.
Do you think they became less popular when they started lumping and splitting Plectranthus, and it all got very
yes, yeah,
for a period of time?
I know the names get a little bit confusing. There may be something in that. There may be.
We've also got some plants. There's a section of this which is always a challenge when you're looking after arid plants, is how do you re-wet the soil that you've allowed to dry out once it's become hydrophobic. So when we're watering, we have to kind of do a couple of turns of sort of lightly misting the soil, so then it can really you then go in and soak it. Almost like a biblical flood. So that's one of the challenges in this space. But you can see that we're sort of developing the planting in terms of the Plectranthus and the Mesembryanthemum, which, whilst they do like being dry, they don't like having completely hydrophobic soil, which is when you water the plant and basically the water is more attracted to itself than the soil. So it just runs off almost like magic. So that's one of the challenges with looking after plants that are sort of xerophytic and arid. We've got the Allogendron dichotomum. I'm not sure it is in the houseplant trade. I've
occasionally seen someone very sort of like somebody with a big collection with one, but not really in general.
Yes.
I don't think you pick that up at a regular houseplant shop.
No, it's certainly covered by the Convention on the International Trade of Endangered Species. I can't remember which appendix is, but it's nice to see the full variation of houseplants you might be more familiar with in the same plant family growing alongside these succulents that actually look like a tree, which is something that I think people find quite shocking. We've got some Arista aloes as well, sort of just perched between two rocks with these really, I'm not sure what the technical term is, but these lovely white markings, which are sort of spines on the individual leaves and whorls going around, as well as more larger sort of Gasteria than I would have associated with Gasteria from the houseplant trade. Gasteria obliqua, which has those really long succulent, sort of almost like a bluey green leaf with these dots of pale moments on the leaf that are very, very cute.
I'm also very much enjoying this, what I'm guessing is a pelargonium.
Yes.
With the beautiful small silvery leaves, and then these amazingly dark magenta. Would they be magenta? Dark, purpley red,
purple.
mauve. Yeah, beautiful. I love this pelargonium. Tell me about this one.
That's Pelargonium pseudoides. And those things that you've picked up on, so the silvery leaves that are almost reniform, but not quite as reniform as Pelargonium reniformia. This is, again, an adaptation to growing in a hot, dry environment. And you can see it's just, if you feel the leaves, they're just covered in this really silky hairs, and it's fantastic for growing. It's one of those ones which you don't have to water as much as the hybrids and the cultivars.
It's a really stunning plant. Well, it's a beautiful collection. Thank you so much for showing me around.
Would you like
Tell me just before we go on to anything else, if people want to visit, if somebody's thinking, I'm planning a trip to London and want to come and visit Chelsea Physic Garden, do we have to book ahead? When are you open? And what are all the practical details for people who have been inspired?
Yes, absolutely. So if you'd like to visit the garden, we are open from Sundays to Fridays. In 2027, it's really exciting. We're opening on Saturdays, which is really, really good. And we're open to the public from 11 o'clock every single day. If you get a membership, which is really great value for money, if you live in London or locally, you can support the garden. You can come in from 10 a.m. You don't have to book in advance, but for those of you that like to book in advance, you can do that via our website, chelseaphysicgarden.co.uk. And you can also just turn up on the day and buy a ticket. The great value piece about our ticket is if you do want to have a tour, there's a free tour that you can go on with our really fantastic tour guides, and they'll give you a tour and tell you all about the history of the garden, as well as, if you're interested, the medicinal uses of the plants. And that's out in the garden. That's included in the cost of your ticket.
That sounds amazing. All of those things sound great. And you got a cafe, so one can refuel with a cup of tea, which is essential, in my opinion, when visiting a garden.
In terms of actually physically getting here, because people don't often know where we are, it's really easy to get here by public transport. That you can get the bus from Victoria if you're coming from farther afield, or you can walk in 20 minutes. And there's also the tube station, the District and Circle line go to Sloane Square, where you can get off, and then you can have a nice little walk down Royal Hospital Road, have a look at the Royal Hospital Chelsea, where the flower show is, as well as the National Army Museum is just down the road too. So if you want to make a full day of it, you really can.
Yeah, it's a wonderful wander from Sloane Square, and I passed Bram Stoker's house. The blue plaque was there, and I didn't realise it was there as I wandered through. So it is a wonderful part of London, and a really fascinating garden. So I hope that lots of listeners will be adding it to their itineraries. But thank you for that little potted summary, Emily.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And that's not quite it. We also visited a small conservatory that plays home to a load of cacti, which we didn't end up talking about, but In addition to that, lots of carnivorous plants, which we did talk about. I had to check whether people outside the UK know what a flume ride is. A log ride, a water ride. That's what I'm talking about when I say talk about flumes at the start of this audio. So do enjoy this last chunk of chat from the Chelsea Physic Garden.
This is our little conservatory, which is just on the end of the cafe, and it's really, really humble glass house compared to our other glass houses that we've just been in, and it houses our cacti and succulent collection alongside our carnivorous plants. And internally, don't tell anyone, but I'm telling you all, we call this the water park.
Yeah, well, I can imagine a little insect or something having a little flume ride down this. You can hear the sound of the running water. Describe this for listeners, this wonderful moving water display.
Yeah, so this is essentially a flood bench, which we use rainwater to manage. But then on top of the flood bench, which routinely floods, we also have this sort of stream running through, because what we grow in here is carnivorous plants, and we grow them carnivorous plants from all over the world, and a lot of them really do like to have constant moisture, which can be a challenge in this little glass house. One of my favourite things about this is you can get really close to these plants, and you can see these really tiny utricularias that are in flower and thriving, which means we've got this right. This is the Utricularia Sandersonia, with these really tiny little white flowers, as well as more familiar carnivorous plants like Pinguicula moriensis, which has got these purple flowers. And someone observes about carnivorous plants is the flowers are always quite often quite far away from the leaves, which are sticky or have glandulous hairs or snap and traps. They're often really beautiful flowers because we're far away from the leaves, so then they don't kill the thing that's going to pollinate them. It's always a challenge. The woes of being a carnivorous plant.
Absolutely.
Your Venus flytraps, the Dionea muscipula, I always struggle with that one, which has got its lovely sort of trap there with the trigger hairs, and then this long stem with white flowers and some lovely Drosera cuneatum and some Sarracenia, of course.
Am I right in thinking the Utricularia, I think it's an underground trap. Is it like a little bladdery thing under the surface where am I getting that right? Does that ring any bells? I'm digging back into my memories here of this particular plant.
Yeah, absolutely. So they have the underground bladder that kind of insects get trapped in. They're not, I will be honest, they're not my particular area of expertise.
No, I mean, I'm not, they're quite strange. They're quite strange. I always look at that and think, who on earth took the time to dissect that plant and figure, somebody did, I'm sure that it's recorded somewhere who did it, but it's just an amazing, compared to the sort of the drama of the Sarracenias, it's quite an unassuming plant in a way. Very beautiful, but it earns its place here through this carnivory that it does under the surface, hidden away, which is fascinating.
Absolutely, I think that's it. People might come into the space and think the only way a plant can eat something is by snapping its trap closed on it. And people expect sometimes the Sarracenia to move, and it's a really important thing, especially for the school children, to understand and to learn about carnivorous plants, that you don't actually have to have this pycnotropy to be able to trap and kill another animal. And it sort of reframes plants as these passive objects. They're definitely a lot more sort of charismatic carnivorous plants. And I think for me, if I hadn't grown up sticking my fingers in a Dionea that I bought from IKEA, I'm not sure I would be in the job.
It's such an entry plant, isn't it? How many of those have been killed in the service of botany? People buy one, as you say, in exactly those circumstances.
And then torture them.
Yeah.
We used to have this invasive stick insect in another garden that I worked in the glass houses, and I used to pick the stick insects and feed them to the carnivorous plant collection.
Well, yeah, that's very honourable work.
It's a great way to do it. And also, Kew and larger tropical nurseries and botanic gardens, we often use the pinguiculas as a natural sticky trap. You might see that yellow sticky paper that flies onto, but why not use a pinguicula at home by your fruit bowl? That's what I do in my flat, is we have a few pinguiculas that we keep by our fruit bowls when the fruit flies come in, and by our food waste bin, as a sort of natural deterrent to fruit flies, because there is always that time of year where your bananas are.
Yeah, absolutely. The fruit flies are in evidence, or are also fungus gnats as well, I guess, if you've got a lot of houseplants, also in force. It's a very cool display, this. I love the way that you've got the water running and all the different plants on display here. It's very cool, and I can see some of my listeners being inspired to create a mini version of this at home, because they're very inventive.
We've got this sort of tumbling giant piece of
what is that?
Driftwood.
It's driftwood. Okay.
Yeah, so we work with someone called Michael Antonetti to install this display. You can find him, I should really mention him, Giardini Antonetti, and he's a sort of creative waterscaper that created the structure and the flood bench for us. And then John Constable, our glasshouse manager, did all the curation and planting out of all the plants. So it's really, really exciting display for small children. You can see this little Sarracenia overhanging some of the driftwood, and hopefully inspires people to think about where these plants actually grow and how they might grow in a bog in the wild.